that's how it begins. So
Yep.
I'm
Okay.
going to send it to you, and we'll read it off tomorrow.
Yep. We'll deal with it tomorrow.
Gary and Mike's initiative of getting local politicians and officials to go on the tour to point out contaminated lands.
Yeah, we'll read that out tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. First thing. Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. This is Peter Giblett and Dave Wheeler. We're Talking Niagara this morning. That's kind of weird because I started doing this and all of a sudden my phone flashed up. Somehow Google responded to me and started recording what I was saying as if it was going to actually do a search. Weird. Anyway, so welcome to...
Big Google is watching.
Yeah, I know. It's always listening to it. Wednesday, 21st of May, 2025, not 2125. I'm going forward 100 years. When did I get the time machine? Okay, so this morning, the one thing we didn't get to yesterday, Smith is congratulating Quebec's new openness on possible pipeline projects and hailing it a major breakthrough.
Yeah, that's different for quite a bit different than we know from Quebec going forward. Quebec has always resisted the pipeline thing. They have their society is much more green oriented kind of thing. But now that the economy of the country and the economy of Quebec is being threatened, and we have Danielle Smith saying I want as much transfer payments as Quebec and Ontario gets. And Quebec has always been the receiver, not the giver of transfer payments. And so when I think that when the Quebec premier looks at all this and thinks there'll be less money coming in, if we do not cooperate with them, they're not going to cooperate with us.
I'm not entirely sure about the transfer. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about the transfer payment stuff, but I have to admit that, hey, as a new Canadian, I'm not as well versed in it as you have. It seems to me kind of an odd way to run our budgets.
Well, transfer payments is always like, for a long time, Ontario was the one that was transferring more money to other provinces than the other way around.
Yeah.
Now Alberta is. Yeah. Because they're wealthier per capita, and of course Alberta's getting sick of this. They also pretty sick of the fact that they're the ones that contribute most to CPP, and they want their hunk of the CPP and run it themselves. Like Quebec has their own pension plan, so Alberta is looking the same. If it does, then it puts the rest of the provinces at risk because Alberta shoulders much of the burden.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, actually, I understand where she's coming from, but I also understand the pipeline is something that perhaps she's kind of most pleased about. This whole pipeline question has been one that's been a bugaboo for her for quite some time. Right. The other things like, the transfer payments, the CPP payments, etc., I get that, probably those are kind of things that one negotiates further down the line.
Yeah, and look at this too. When Alberta needed a lot of labor, they invited laborers from iron workers and boiler makers and all that. They invited them from Quebec to go to Alberta.
Yeah.
If the similar job was happening in Quebec, they wouldn't permit outside province workers to come in there. And then if they did, so they have regulations against all that. And I don't think the rest of Canada is going to put up with that too much more. And Legault made his appearance on the podcast. Contact hosted by Stephen Bureau last week, Stéphane Bureau last week, has said the senses are growing openness to potential pipeline projects among Quebecers. Well, They're saying run the pipeline right across northern Ontario and into Quebec, and even build refineries in the port areas near the Atlantic Ocean there in Quebec, and you can refine the oil or transport it there to European markets. They also have a considerable amount of natural gas deposits in Quebec that haven't been developed
Yeah.
so far. So they were the one province that sort of held to that environmental thing, but they could, because they had an enormous amount of hydroelectric power. It's an enviable situation. So you can always say, we don't need your energy. We got a lot of our own. And it's like clean, and we're clean and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when your economy now is
again,
beginning to be sort of attacked by forces that you have no power over. You have power in Canada, but you don't have any power in the States.
Mind you, I have to say one thing. It's like, okay, so when it comes to pipelines, occasionally they spring a leak, but very, very occasionally. In comparison to, let's say, the spillage occurring if a truck carrying oil crashes and spills it, spills its load on the highway. I think I'd prefer a pipeline any day of the week.
Well, oil does go across Quebec, and it goes in train cars. It goes in train cars, and now Lac Megantic tragedy that killed about 50 people. 50 people in a bar having a good time one night, and a train got loose, crashed, and fed an inferno in the middle of that town and killed 50 people. And that was a train car getting loose.
Things happen, accidents happen on transit systems, whether it's train or truck, whereas in a pipeline, usually the amount of ecological issues is tiny.
Yes. Yeah. But the problem with pipelines is eco-terrorism.
Yeah, that's the only downside.
Terrorists, they'll blow up a pipeline or there just to make a mess, just to show everyone, So there are weirdos that will do that kind of thing. Now, the other problem here, of course, is that the Canadian Energy Regulator, as well as the International Energy Agency, are telling us that by 2028 to 2029, demand for oil will peak globally, and that will always peak in Canada. So they're predicting what they've always predicted. Oh, we won't be using much oil, or less oil. We'll be using a lot of oil for the next 50 years. That's just the way it is. Less and less, hopefully, but we'll still be using a lot.
Yeah.
So they're saying, well, why bother building a pipeline when the peak demand comes just in a few years from now? Well, that peak demand is going to hold at a pretty high level for a while. So we can get our oil to market and use the profits from that to find ways of not using oil. That's supposed to be the idea.
The whole point is that it might peak by 2029, but I still think that many of the green ideas are not going to come to fully to fruition until maybe 2035, 2040 or so,
It's definitely a shift going on, and I can agree with that.
Yeah.
But the very idea that the oil profits were supposed to be the things that those profits were supposed to be what enriches the province and the country with funds to design greener energy systems. You see, that was supposed to be it. Let's use our oil wealth now to invest in greener systems, and that's what Alberta claims they're doing. And yet, the target for that was ridiculous by the federal government, obviously. And they said the federal government wanted it done by 2030 or something like that. And Danielle Smith says it's unrealistic until 2050. So
Yeah, exactly.
it can be realized by 2050, but cannot be realized by 2030.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, sometimes you have to take sometimes you have to take a more, you have to plan the movement ahead. Now, interesting. When I was young, I just said, no, you got to do it now. But but as I've gotten a lifetime of experience behind me, it's like I know that projects take time to plan. You can't just end oil production tomorrow and put in something else, because it's like, what is it, right? You got no hydrogen that can go in the tanks of your car. You got no alternative, right? You've got to get there. Got to get to the alternative before you can replace the current.
Yeah, you got a place, let's say like Kentucky, that gets 98% of its electric power from coal. Even if the whole state goes electric EV, you're still making all kinds of mess
Yeah,
with coal or oil. So the fossil fuel thing has to be sort of diverted. And you're not going to do that by saying, okay, Canada, you're going to sell a lot less oil and we're going to be environmentally friendly. We're going to sell less oil. Well, all that means is Saudi Arabia or Nigeria or Venezuela picks up that slack. So not
because they don't care.
the same amount of oil is going to be used whether you produce it or not.
Yeah, and they don't care.
You might as well make a profit out of that oil when you have the chance. Use those profits to build your economy to a greener economy.
Yeah, those places don't care about that. They just get on with it, right?
Yeah.
You
want oil? We'll sell it to you. But up here, well, we can't sell it to you because it's. And Mike says, have they gotten rid of provincial tariffs yet? They're working on it. This is another thing that won't happen overnight, and I don't know why. But in certain areas, like for instance, Ontario and Manitoba made a deal, and I think Ontario and New Brunswick made a deal, and I think some of the other provinces might be a little bit more reluctant because they have certain things that they rely on. I don't know about Quebec. Sounds like it's open to breaking down these barriers too. It's ridiculous. We had 13 independent economies all trading with the United States, and we don't have a free trade agreement with each other.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. We got to get that over and done with. Danielle Smith, Francois Legault, Doug Ford, bang your heads together, get it done. Get it done. You got 12 months to do it, right? And
I think most of them want to. Yeah. It's that protectionist thing that ironically the U.S. protectionist ideology that currently exists in the administration now is the thing that's turning us away from protectionism in our own country.
Yeah. And the thing is, there might well be certain markets that need to be protected, right? But let's negotiate them.
Well, for one thing, you can standardize, like trucks. Trucks aren't standardized across the province. Seriously, each different province has its own regulatory body when it comes to trucking. Ridiculous. You could easily unify a common set of regulations that is going to be safe and acceptable to every province, because that's just dumb.
Yeah. Well, for example, one of the things that you're talking about there, safety, trucking safety, for example. Ontario is supposed to have the toughest safety standards in the whole of North America, from the truck viewpoint.
Right? Well, if that's the case, then the rest of the provinces adopt it. But what happens is, whether it's Ontario or Quebec or Alberta or BC, whoever's in charge of that in the government of BC or the government of Manitoba or whatever, that's their little kingdom, and they don't want to give it up. That's their little kingdom, their little bureaucratic kingdom. If they see that bureaucrat breaking up, they see their jobs going south. So they want to hold on to that little bit of kingdom, the little kingdom they have, that fiefdom. And that's what really is a real problem. It is bureaucracy
Well,
to bureaucracy. Each bureaucracy it wants its little fiefdom.
Dare I say that needs to be turned to becoming a federal, that needs to be federal level decision making, I think, on things like that.
Possibly,
we need
but
one
it
national
still
standard.
has to include the provinces.
Well, we need one
As
national
Daniel
standard.
Smith has pointed out, there's a lot more autonomy for a province in the Canadian system than is normally used and normally pointed out.
Yeah.
So she's pointed out quite. I mean, she's taken the government to court when it's regard to her autonomy, or her meaning Alberta's autonomy.
Yeah, of course.
In regulating its own, minerals, etc.
Yeah.
So she's pointed that out, that that the feds are sticking their nose in places where that is the province of the province.
Yeah.
If you want to make it like that. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, strong independent provinces working together. I think that's the best way to go. And if Quebec is open for more pipelines, that'll be good. That'll open up some of our oil to more markets. We import oil on the East Coast because Quebec will block the oil pipeline coming from the West. That's kind of dumb. We're feeding other nations. 30% of the oil we use comes offshore when we have the third largest reserves in the world. Does that make sense?
Not at all.
Third largest reserves in the world, and we've got 40 million people.
I'm not.
Does it make sense when you buy somebody else's oil?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure why it's going to the northern side of Quebec, but hey, I'm not going to argue that. I'm not even going to go there because I don't know enough about it.
Well, we have to, when we build a pipeline through Ontario now. Right now, the pipeline goes through the States to get to Sarnia, and if Donald J. Trump wants to be a jerk, he can just shut that right off. So they have to make a pipeline that goes entirely in Canada now to be safe from any kind of interference.
Like that. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else on that?
No, it's just it's very interesting that Quebec has opened its eyes a bit, and although I can understand the province's dislike of fossil fuels and resistance toward it, but you're going to have to cooperate with the other provinces.
It's still a fact of life, at least for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I remember Quebecers burn as much gas as anyone else does.
Yeah, and that's exactly my thought. In fact, actually, when I was up in Quebec and I saw their port area, I thought they were much more. There seemed to be much more smoke coming out of whatever it was. I don't know what the things were. There seemed to be more smoke than there was in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Hamilton on a bad day was mild compared to what I saw in Quebec, in Montreal.
So they right now they have the enviable position to have a lot of electrical power that's hydro. It's super clean. Once the environmental damage is done, when they build the dams and things like that, thereafter it's pretty much clean power. Now they do the environmental damage up front by building dams and and interfering with the ecosystems, but thereafter it's clean. It's just water that's falling and that is tapped. So they have that enviable position to say, yeah, well, we want to be green. Well, you can be green when you have that kind of power. If you didn't have that, if you take away your hydropower, I think your attitudes would be much different, and you'd be welcoming fossil fuels, or at least and nuclear fuels as well.
Okay.
Remember, we are in a transition point here where we are transitioning to a greener economy.
We are.
And it takes wealth to do that. And it seems really dumb to shoot yourself
and as I said,
and not sell the resources that you have and use that money to green up your economy.
And as I said, the 20-year-old me, the 20-year-old me when I was way back when, I just said, why can't we do it tomorrow? Right. Whereas the 60-odd-year-old me of today says, these things require a plan because you need a transition plan to work.
Yes, and the 49-year-old me concurs with you.
All right. Yeah, because I think experience has shown, right?
Yes, indeed.
And hey, I've seen some fantastic changes throughout the world. As I said, I've talked to you about this industrial place that I went to when I was about 20, and then last went to when I was in my early 50s, and the staggering amount of difference because now all the power is actually now clean energy in that area. Right? It's gone from horrible, filthy coal powered factories to clean energy throughout.
Yep.
So these things are possible. But they do take time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. So survivors of clergy sexual abuse have been turning up the call for reforms from Chicago.
I was waiting for this, and I'm pretty sure our friend Sully would know all about this guy because having been a child abused by the priesthood, he keeps on top of this kind of thing. But I was waiting for this because he is being a cardinal through one of the most devastating chapters in Catholic history, and that is the widespread child abuse by its priests all over the world, millions of children. As much as they tried to put, and most of the time when this was going on, the church was much more interested in covering it up. As Sully told us, what they do is they get you in a room with your parents and they offer you money to shut up, but you have to
sign the parents' money.
Yes.
Very often.
Yes. And something happened. We're really sorry about it, but here's some hush money for it. We don't want the church to get a bad idea. And they leave it with the impression that it's one bad priest when they full well know there's all kinds of them.
Yeah.
And that priest will be transferred somewhere and the same thing will happen.
Well, the Survivor Network of Those Abused by Priests, or SNAP, as they like to call it, is actually calling out about allegations of abuse by Chicago priests and others in the clergy, including, as widespread as from Peru, Colombia, Canada, Australia, across Europe as well. They estimated there were 600,000 or more French victims.
Yes, remember the French were the most courageous of anyone. The French Catholics body was the most courageous of all. They opened up their books and they brought out as much evidence as they could and say, yes, this is what we did. Yes, this is the damage we did. Here it is. It is at least this bad. And so every other country, every other Catholic diocese has sort of turtled every time they have to be forced to admit it. When they do, and then they wait for it to go away again. And Leo, he seems to have been part of this. Now, nowhere is he accused of any of the abuse, but he is certainly being accused of the cover-up and looking the other way.
Yeah. And when you think about it, the first time I heard about this story, I would have to say that I was at work, and it was 1982, I think it was. The place I was working at, we were having a I think breakfast down a local cafe, as we occasionally did, a group of people at work, and somebody brought the paper in of the Sun or the Mirror or something, and there was this scandal about Catholic priests abusing children, and that was the first, and even there they said this is not a single occurrence. This isn't just the one priest they were talking about. This is happening throughout the world.
Well, I remember working in 1989. I was working in some grain silos, putting in new motors and things like that. And I was working with another millwright, and he was a devout Catholic, and he told me so. And I says, "Well, what do you think about the child abuse that's happening among? I mean, that must concern you." And he got very angry.
Yeah,
He's very angry with me, and he says,
don't believe the press.
"Well, how many could there be?" I says, "Well, there's 139 cases pending," and he just said, "Ha! You know how many thousands of priests there are, and you're talking to me 139? Sounds like a lot, but it's little. Like you really think that's a big deal? 139 priests, and how many of them are really guilty and all that?" So he really ripped into me, and I says, "I don't know, man. That seems to be a lot, especially when they try to hide it." And of course, he didn't speak to me for the whole afternoon after that. But I think even he, over time, had to admit that was going on, even though he didn't want to.
Yeah, and I get it that loyal Catholics think of themselves as being, as the church will deal with it in the way that the church deals with it. But I think that time has told that realistically, what you need to do with these priests is you either got to report them to the police, or you've got to put them in jobs where they're no longer in contact with children.
Yeah. Yes. Basically, you're going to have all kinds of eyes. Now, Francis did do that. He made sure he wanted to make sure that none of this happened again, and he wanted all eyes on it. But he wasn't too happy about talking too much about it.
Yeah.
He would have rather seen the whole thing go away. He would take care of it. But what they want here, SNAP wants, is a zero tolerance.
Yeah.
They see the Vatican trying to be very weak on this, try to kind of wait till it goes away and not really enforce things as hard as they could. They do have trouble getting priests after all. And sadly, they've been supported by groups and religious groups that have been rife with pedophilia and abuse. And it's not just abuse. There's women. Some women have come forward and said priests have abused them, full-grown women. So there is and here it says, your personality says to us, I grew up surrounded by priests and nuns all the time and never heard firsthand or met someone abused until Sully when I was 50 years old. Yeah, I'm sure lots and lots of Catholics went through.
Absolutely, Chris. There are 1 billion Catholics out there, and it's only a small minority.
I'm not so sure. Well, it's a significant minority. At one time, there 13. It was thought that, like, one report, a secular report, says it could be up to 13% of the priests abused children or women. And the Catholic Church itself, in their study, said it was around 2%. Yeah. So if you put it somewhere in between, it's probably around 5%. And if you have only 5% of your priests abusing, and you could easily have not got into it. And remember, too, the Catholic Church was expert at keeping the lid on this. And
I didn't know that Pornhub head office was Quebec.
Yeah.
I've heard there's no ID required, but anyway, yeah.
Well, the fact is,
mind you,
the reason why you didn't learn about it is because the Catholic Church was very, very good at keeping it quiet. And when it finally exploded, it had been gone on for years, and they were very resentful and defiant and try not to pay the fines that were happening and moving money. And it wasn't until that it just got worse and worse and worse. But meanwhile, for years and years, they put a lid on it. They kept it quiet, just so it's a little rumor here and a little rumor here about the odd bad.
And it's more than 139 cases. It's in the thousands. We know that for now.
That was in 1989.
Yeah, that was
1989.
Yeah.
There was 139 cases pending just in the United States.
Yeah,
against priests.
Well, and there was, and in 1989, as I said, when it first blew up in Britain was 1981, 1982, and the allegations back then were, there were at least 100 priests in Britain that they were talking about.
Yeah, and it's thousands and thousands of priests worldwide and millions of children that have been abused. And that's not talking about women. Lots of women have been abused by the clergy as well.
Yeah.
But you hear horror stories about a priest raping a 10-year-old girl and then telling her that fire and brimstone will rain down upon her parents if she ever says anything. That's just, I mean, you hear millions of those stories.
But I have to also say that I think Pornhub is a different issue entirely. It's got nothing to do with this particular question.
No, I doubt it. Yeah, no.
Right. So anyway,
so this guy's got a lot to answer for. So Francis has tried to make the church accountable for what it does, but he's still trying to do it in the most quietest way as possible. He fully well admitted what had gone on. He made the different priests and dioceses responsible for their cover-ups and everything else like that, but he still wanted to keep it quiet, as we found out when he went to Peru, or was it Chile? It was either Peru or Chile.
Peru, I think. It was
what?
Peru. It was Peru, I believe.
Peru. And he tried to look the other way on abuses when the Catholic faithful came out to talk to him about it. He ignored them, and they followed him right back to the Vatican and forced him to talk about it. And in his humble way, he thanked them for forcing him to do something that he intended to do, but didn't want to make it look that evident. So whether or not, obviously, the Catholic Church does not want this to continue to happen. They have been smeared by their own behavior and their own inability to protect the children of their faith, and they have to be accounted for it. And Leo, he was part of the cover-up.
Yeah,
he has to come clean and tell us what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to go with the zero tolerance, which I think has to happen? You cannot have a priest abusing children and then send them for counseling and then send them back in.
No, that's no good. You can't do that. Yeah,
no, it has to be zero tolerance.
Yeah, it's to be zero tolerance. These people are moved out of any job where there's contact with the public, and that's the be all and end all. There's no contact with the public thereafter once accused.
Yeah, it has a situation here where they had a priest that was an abuser, and then in Leo's, who is now Robert Prevost, recommended the guy be a tour guide at a zoo or something like that, and so that's got to come back on him too. So there are things that they didn't want to believe what was going on, and they just have to face the fact. And then their real problem is their arrogance. We are the holy people. We are the people of God. No one tells us what to do. We're better than you. We devoted our life to God and everything else, so we're better than you. So you don't tell us what to do. We tell you what to do. But the secular world will not accept that any longer.
Yeah. And I know that the difficulty, of course, of putting a case together that the police can take to prosecute is a whole level of difficulty more. So often putting them into non-contact roles is about the only thing you can really do.
Yeah, this is had Shed Aquarium received any information regarding a kind of allegations that had been brought to our attention. That was when they hired this guy,
Yeah,
the aquarium, and he had a history of child abuse.
yeah,
So, and he was an Augustinian official. So the priest worked at a popular tourist school field trip destination in Chicago for nearly a decade. And before Shed officials learned about the abuse claims. So he was using that position to, abuse children if he could. Like, oh God, man.
mm-hmm.
I have no idea why they just kind of pretended that that's okay. We'll get him out of the church and get him in as a tour operator for who? Children. Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, and you can understand why the people in Chicago are actually hopping mad about this.
Of course they
Right.
are.
Survivors Network of those abused by priests, SNAP, and that's why they're hopping mad. And they have every right to be. We want to see change, though. We want to, it's like I've got friends who are Catholics, and we've had this discussion before, and I want to, they all want to see change, right?
Yes.
Pure and simple. They want to see change. They believe in their religion, as they have every right to do, and they want to see things change.
Well, of course they don't want that to continue to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem is, even a lot of the Catholic faithful are still in denial about this, which is sad too.
Yeah,
as you could tell from Sully's experiences.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so moving on. Hamas welcomes the UK statement threatening concrete action against Israel. Now, this has come from the Jewish Chronicle, right? Because I heard over yesterday there was a lot of people saying that Hamas was praising UK, France, and Canada for their statements, and wanted, was applauding them as being pro-Palestinian.
Well, they didn't really overdo it. They said the UK, France, and Canada initiative that threatened concrete action is against Israel was a step in the right direction, basically. I don't think that the Hamas or any of the other Palestinian groups are overly enthused by this. They're happy that it's happened, but they would like actually more action to actually happen. They've heard a lot of words. The difference with this is that there is actually strong resistance in the West that normally gives Israel a blank check to do what they want.
Yeah.
They'll complain, oh, you're being too vicious, you're being too mean. You better not do that, and then just never do anything about it. And this is a statement by the three countries that there will be concrete actions. They're talking about sanctions and other things like that.
Yeah, and two of those countries are crucial because, of course, they are veto holders.
They're what?
They're United Nations veto holders, right?
Yeah.
UK and France hold a veto, which is a pretty powerful position. I'm not saying there's anything to veto here, but because they hold the veto,
they're the permanent members of the Security Council.
Yeah, they're permanent members of the Security Council. They are listened to with a lot more authority than most other nations.
Yeah, and they're pointing out the fact that there is just not enough food getting in there, and that the abuses of the Israeli army are just the IDF are just too beyond. I mean, they're taking out a whole neighborhood to get one guy. Women and children, doesn't matter. Now, they did have a kind of a commando raid where they went in and they took one guy out and then captured his family. Now, normally what they would have done is they would have located him, put a big bomb on, and killed everybody in and around him just to get him. and they think that's okay. And right now, this whole thing has got out of hand. Of course, October 7th was Yahya Sinwar's
Yeah.
idiot move because the but it like of course this is like I condemn Sinwar for doing that because he opened the door for this for Israelis to be able to do what they're doing. It's exactly what they want to do. They want to make it an unlivable place. They want to get rid of the Palestinians in the Gaza, and Yair Sinwar made that very possible for them by killing 1,200 people and taking captive 250 more. But right now, what is the result? Israel has used it as an excuse to kill 60,000 people. Like it's got to be getting pretty close to 60,000 now, and maiming 120,000 people. And we don't know how many people are under the rubble.
Yeah. We
So,
don't know how many are under the rubble.
so this
And
whole
we
thing,
may never find out. We may never find out because I've been hearing stories that they are looking to just leave, essentially not develop in different areas.
well, then all that rubble's got to be cleared away. About the only thing good it's going to be for is roadstone or maybe gravel. You could recycle some of that as aggregate into new concrete. That's about all you can do.
It is about all you can do, but the point being is that they have not really got. There's not really in Israel. Israelis have got very little incentive to actually want to dig it up.
Well, yeah. Who does? Some outside agency is going to have to go in there and rebuild.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Canada, and I'm happy that my country, Canada, finally stepped up. I mean, they stepped up with money of $100 million about a month or so ago. But it can't spend that money because the Israelis won't let the food and medicine and water in. And it's willing to spend the money and buy those supplies, but the Israelis refuse to let it in. They weaponize food and water and medicine.
Yeah.
And they want to make the place unlivable. And Netanyahu keeps saying, "Oh, we're going to go with the American plan, Trump's plan to make it a vacation wonderland." But they're going to make sure they do as much as possible to make it like, I mean, I think it was shocking to them when they did have that brief ceasefire when the Palestinians started to return to their busted down homes and started making camps in and around where their homes used to be.
Yep.
And I think that shocked the Israelis, thinking they really are coming back to live in their old homes. And we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that they don't have any place to live so we can get rid of them. And anyway, the whole thing is just a constant and forever problem ever since Zionism began and the colonization of what is we call now Israel, what we used to call Palestine, just never really worked. It was to build an ethno-religious state called Israel, where you had to be Jew to live there, and that means the Palestinians got to go, even though they're probably connected in DNA wise with those Ashkenazi Jews that were the first to come and colonize what is now Israel. Now, Israel's not going to go anywhere, but it wants to expand. And unfortunately, it keeps expanding into Palestinian territory, and that has to come to an end somehow, somewhere, sometime.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of pressure in the United States, who normally are very, 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 very ignorant of this, the average American or Canadian for that matter, because the press refuses to take on the side, play fair with both sides. We usually don't get the Palestinian point of view. We don't understand the settler movement, and we don't understand Zionism. And the Israeli lobby is very powerful in the United States, and it's pretty powerful in Britain and Canada too.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
they will besmirch anyone who does not follow, toe the line. As if you want a good assessment of that, listen to Massey, the Republican congressman in what was it, Kentucky or Tennessee? I can't remember. So look at Massey. He's the guy that's bucking Trump at the moment too about his Trump's big beautiful deal. He's saying that it would increase the deficit by too much. That's why he can't accept it. And Trump says, "Got to get rid of that guy."
Yeah, well, what can you do?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he actually said that he's got to be voted out.
Yeah. Yeah, an interesting thing is, so next year we're going to start thinking about what's going to happen with the midterms, haven't we?
Well, that's well, that's 2026. So
Yeah.
the Trump administration, that's one of the reasons why they're moving as fast as they are, even though it's faster than initially called for in Project 2025. And we mentioned this at another time in our show. That Project 2025 had a little bit more calculated way in which to turn the government into sort of a MAGA base or a much more conservative base. They have initiated a lot of this already by getting rid of a lot of people and et cetera, et cetera. But Trump feels that the timing has to be faster. So that's why you're getting all these confusing tariffs and all that. They're just throwing things out there as fast as they can and seeing, like throwing pasta against the wall, see what strands stick and what's don't.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. BC hockey program is seeking coaches for an upcoming female teams.
Yes, that's what I thought was pretty interesting. You put that there. Tell us all about it.
I didn't put it there. You put it there.
I put it there? Okay. Yeah. Well, I did read it, so I thought it was yours. So I was going to give you a.
No, it was kind of. Right. Yeah.
All right. So basically, what it is I thought it was interesting. Although the second time I looked at it, I thought it was. I did read it though, and and basically what it is out in BC, they have leagues for women, which doesn't sound to be too extraordinary these days, does it?
No.
So women like to play hockey just like anyone else likes to play hockey.
I think they have there's women's leagues in Ontario, aren't there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen women hockey players at the Gale Centre.
Oh God, my ex was a goalie for a girls' team back in the 70s.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. So and I tell you, one of the best. I used to play pickup hockey here and there. Played in the league and also played another game for a pickup team. And one of our guests that came to play was this Maureen, I think her name was. And holy cow, she a really good player, really good skater and stick handler and everything. So she came out and played with the guys. And at the time, they didn't have a female change room, basically. She had to go into the boiler room. And that's where she changed, like where the janitor's room was, which is ample size, so she could change in there. But we only had they only open up one room to change, and it was the guy. Well, two rooms even, but it was guys, two teams, and there was no place for her to change, or so we got. I think she used the janitor's room, which was lots of room in there, and she could change, put her skates on, and all that other stuff. But that was it. But she came up, she played, and she was a superb player. She had a superb, excellent endurance. Her skating skills and stick handling skills were excellent, and super good team player as well. So yeah, of course, women can play hockey very well.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And basically, but in BC, they can't find enough coaches. Now, I don't know why this is, probably because the leagues haven't been around long enough for a number of women to become coaches yet.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
it needs more time to develop the coaching. I think probably what they rely on now is mostly men coaches.
yeah. Yeah. And that's inevitable because I guess there's more men in the game anyway. And ex-players become coaches. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that you get a mix of coaches, both female and male.
Yes.
But of course, the female game is probably different, slightly different in nature to the male game.
Well, there's been female coaches of male teams.
Of course, sure. Why not?
Why not? As long as but I think probably the problem here with BC is because the female leagues haven't been around as quite as long. You need mature players, people that have played the game and matured out of it, basically the competitive aspect of it, and then therefore have the skills to coach
and go through the coaching programs to actually get themselves educated as coaches.
Yes.
And that's as important as actually being the coach, because there's good education out there for coaching.
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of ways in which to deal with kids or young women, or in this particular case, young women. But the thing is, you have to have a skill set of your own and know how to teach that.
Yeah.
And even the skill set that you don't even possess yourself, you're supposed to be able to recognize the skills of every different player, know where to put them, and how to arrange them in your team, and how to get them to improve their skills during the season.
Absolutely. It's the person who comes on board and says, I'm a goal, I'm an attacker, I'm going to score goals. And you look at them, you look at how they play, and you go, no, you're a much better defense man than you are a goal scorer. Much more effective at the back end than you are at the front end, or something like that,
Yeah, well, that's
the role of a coach, to recognize the value of the player.
Yeah, and where to put them and how to teach them new skills. So and of course there's probably clinics, and there's got to be politics involved and all that other stuff. But the fact of it is, I think the reason why they're not finding enough coaches right now is because they haven't been around long enough for the more mature players to actually then evolve into becoming coaches.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a time you like when you're coaching. A lot of it is just your own time. Quite often coaches don't get paid.
Most of it, in most of those kinds of leagues, no, they don't get paid. All right, exactly. So it's their time, their energy, they're heroes to most of these leagues, right? The coaches are the heroes to these leagues.
I don't know if they're the heroes, but they're essential.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on. Temporary bridge closures to the Welland Canal bridges.
Yeah, well, just keep an eye open. What bridges are closed?
Yeah,
I don't know why they're closed.
Lakeshore in St. Catharines is, for example, yesterday was closed 9 till 4. Allenburg will close today. Port Coburn will close tomorrow, and just keep an eye on them because there's going to be bridge closures. And this is the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation have made us aware of that.
What kind of work are they doing?
That they don't say.
Huh. They usually tell you why.
I wish they would tell you.
It says so right here for maintenance.
Yeah, but
it is work being done.
Yeah.
So I would have thought after the winter they would have done all their maintenance during the winter months when it was all closed anyway. Well, maybe this is a little bit extra they have to do.
Maybe you're talking about bridge maintenance or something like that, which wasn't possible in the winter. Probably the type of maintenance you couldn't do in the winter.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm guessing. It's to the best of my knowledge, that's about all you can say, really.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think that's just about it for the day.
Yeah. Well, I know there was one thing you threw us up there this morning. You threw Niagara Pet Shelter reports over 900 animals abandoned so far in 2025. I presume we're talking about dogs
Dogs and cats.
and cats.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's others as well, but mostly them. So
Yeah.
it's 900 animals already.
Yeah.
Dogs and
It's
cats
pretty bad.
have been either abandoned or surrendered. Now, what happens is a lot of people abandon the animals in places they know that will be found
Yeah.
by the SPCA, and that's because if you take an animal that you can no longer afford to keep, then it will cost you $100 to surrender that animal to the Humane Society. So people don't want to pay that $100, and I think it's $40 for a cat or something like that.
Okay.
And of course, they need that to rehabilitate the
Well,
animal and make the animal be able to be adopted.
yeah.
Now pets cost a lot of money now. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've ever owned a dog or a cat and taken it to the vet, it's like an arm and a leg. So obviously, a lot of people aren't in the place where they can afford these pets. And I bet a lot of these happened during COVID when a lot of people got pets during COVID.
Well,
Didn't really realize what kind of time
yeah.
and effort you have to put
Well,
in
it was
to
funny.
keep a dog or a cat.
About 2 years ago, when our Melody was still alive, she died last year. We had a visitor, a frequent visitor, a young female cat who kept coming around, and Melody didn't like her at all. Used to hiss at her every time she was in the neighborhood, right? And eventually we kind of went, okay, well,
Well,
she's
cats
persistent.
are catty.
Yeah. So we picked her up and we took her to the Humane Society, and the Humane Society said, that she was chipped, and they told us the neighborhood that the cat had come from, which was uh, actually more up your way than it was my way, kind of over the back of your direction, away from Thoroldstone, more into the center there, into the the area I'm talking about. All right. That's the area, so the back end of between Thoroldstone, Dorchester, and Drummond, that kind of area was apparently where it came from. So it couldn't have walked there. Most likely couldn't have walked to our area.
Yeah, you never know. The cats,
Cats
particularly the
do.
males, go all over the place. If
Well,
they're
no,
not
this was a female cat,
okay.
right? But again, they only knew from the chip that that's where she was. They obviously didn't give us their address. They just said, "Yeah, we'll take care of it," right?
Well,
And
there you go.
apparently, what they do is they do go to the people and they inquire whether they've lost their cat.
Well, yeah, and the people would know, but all kinds of people do that. They have when I had townhouse, I have tenant, and they would have a cat, and
Yeah.
then they would leave the cat, and when they left, they moved away, and you'd have to phone them and say your cat is still here. Oh, we never had a cat. Oh yeah, you did. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, it's out there inside. You're feeding it and all that. You don't want the cat, so you're just gonna leave it? No way.
Yeah.
Either take it to the Humane Society or come and get it.
Yeah. 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 And that I agree with you. That's kind of wrong. And to me, my cats were part of the family. Right.
Well, most people. Anyway, in this particular case, we're not talking about people who can afford them or whatever. We find that there's a lot of people who cannot afford the pets anymore, and they find that the although it's kind of like without dignity, they put the the cats or the dogs in a place where they can be found, and they abandon them. Some of them, half of them, of the 900, half of them have been turned in, and people don't want to pay that fee if they own the dog or cat to the Humane Society. So those who don't want to pay it or don't want the stigmatism of someone knowing that they're abandoning an animal, they'll put it someplace where the Humane Society can find them. Sadly, though, now the Humane Society says, look, if you've got a dog and you can no longer afford it or no longer take care of it, we'll work with you. Just bring it in. You're going to owe us $100, but we'll work with you somehow. So you just pay a little at a time or anything, but try to bring it in, and we need that money to help rehabilitate the animal. Make sure that that we can put it up.
Well, it's better to take it. It's better to take it to the Humane Society and get it get it another family than to leave it in the streets, I think.
Yeah, you might be confident that the Humane Society is going to find them, but the best way to do it is to take the animal to the Humane Society. Now, unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work. I remember a neighbor of mine. She had a couple of cats and a dog, and another cat started to show up, and probably because she had cats.
Yeah.
So we were talking about it because she was my neighbor. She said, "Oh, I'm going to take it to the Humane Society." So she did. And the people at the Humane Society accused her of trying to get rid of one of her own cats. And she had to defend herself vehemently. No, I've got 2 cats already and a dog. I can't take care of this one. This is not mine. I don't know whose this is.
Yeah.
So she wasn't going to do that again. And I don't think at the Humane Society, they do that anymore either.
Yeah.
But
we never had any issue with the Humane Society when we took that young lady there.
Yeah, well, it had a chip in it too, so that would absolve you of any suspicion right off the bat, So.
Yeah.
But anyway, whether or not you cannot afford to have a cat or a dog anymore, vet bills are incredible. If you want to have a healthy dog or cat, you're going to spend immense amount of money on veterinary bills.
Yeah.
Particularly when they get sick, when they get a little older in life. My neighbor across the street, I think they spent $5,000 on their dog.
Yeah.
Only to watch it die. So so vet bills, the injections they need and all that other stuff, and all manner of just even regular inspections basically cost a lot of money. So less and less people are going to be able to afford an animal. And that's why I think you have already at this particular time, it's only May, and we've had 900 animals turned in. So,
yeah. Well, and also remember, there's always that Christmas gifting thing. Oh, gift them a cat. Yeah. For Christmas, that's unwise, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You always get the new boyfriend who's a woman who's got a kid, and she gets a new boyfriend, and he thinks it's going to be a great idea to bring the little fella a dog, right? So he dumps the dog in there, and then they split up, and the single mom stuck with a dog now, that kind of thing.
She doesn't want, yeah.
Well, she didn't want in the first place, but she was, she understood the guy's trying to be nice, but then the guy doesn't want any responsibility for the dog, and so.
Yeah, well, that is a part of modern life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can kind of call it quits at that.
Okay, we can. And without further ado, I bid you adieu. Don't forget Gaza. Canada hasn't forgotten Gaza, and UK and France hasn't. So let's hope this is momentum.